Hi, this is Lindsay, your backcountry bombshell. On the Pacific Crest Trail, there's a term that we pretty much all use all the time, which is hike your own hike. And what that means is that the experience that you're having on the Pacific Crest Trails is yours and yours alone, and it should be exactly whatever you choose, and nobody has a right to tell you what to be. There are people that are purists and really hike every mile of the Pacific Crest Trail, or at least every mile that they can where there hasn't been reroutes, and there's non-purists who will skip sections so that they have the kind of social experience they want. When I first started planning this trip, I met a man who had hiked the Pacific Crest Trail a few years before, and he was a purist, and he said some people don't hike every mile and they still say they've done the Pacific Crest Trail. And this is an attitude that a lot of purists have towards the non-purists. Non-purists might think, you know, I don't know why these guys are so stuck on hiking every mile of the trail. There's no point in punishing yourself if you're not having a good time. And the reality is both, positions are valid. Now, when I first met this guy, I thought, well, I'm not going to be one of those people that doesn't hike every mile of the trail. I'm here to do the trail. I'm going to hike every single mile of the trail I can. When their sections are rerouted, I'm going to hike through the reroutes. Now that I've been on the trail for 500 miles, my hike that I envision has certainly changed. For me, the #1 priority of doing this hike has been to do YouTube and blogging, and thus far I've done very little of that because the social experience or the push to make miles so that I can actually finish in a reasonable amount of time has really made it harder for me to do those things. So one of the things that I came to realize is that there are going to be times where I have to take off the trail to pursue my blog and my YouTube, and that will mean more 0 days for me. Now, what that also means is I'm going to get behind the other hikers. On the Pacific Crest Trail, there's a certain window of time for you to hike it. You have to start early enough that you have enough water sources in the desert. You have to not get to the Sierras so early that there's too much snow, and you have to make it to Washington before the snow hits. So all the hikers tend to migrate in what is called the herd. Now, when I first started planning this trip, my first priority, of course, was the blog and YouTube. My second priority was to hike every mile of the PCT. And since I've been on the PCT, that has changed more to have a really good experience with the community of the Pacific Crest Trail, to be able to interview the people that are doing this hike and to be able to build these deep friendships with people that I've been hiking in with and around. So when I started realizing that I was getting behind because of the blog and YouTube, I made the decision that I'm willing to hitch to stay with the herd. And that was a pretty tough decision to make. But another major factor in the way that I'm hiking my hike is the fact that I have exacerbated some old injuries of mine. I'm currently resting some foot, knee, and hip injuries. I've been on and off the trail with it for a little bit and have seen a doctor and talked to a physical therapist, and that means that I'm way behind the herd at this point. The last section that I would be doing would be the last push through the Mojave to get to Kennedy Meadows, and I have decided to skip that section. That was a really hard choice for me because that last push through Mojave is kind of like this test and trial of yourself, and when you get to Kennedy Meadows, you're at the beginning of the Sierras, and it's this big reward for getting through the desert. And this year in particular, a major water source dried up, and there's a potential 44-mile section without water. There have been a lot of trail angels leaving caches, and they've been very reliable, so chances of me actually having to hike quite that long without water isn't very viable, but you do have to plan. And the reality is, with my body the way it is right now, there's no way I can carry an extra 25 pounds of water plus 7 days of food plus gear and not end up with my body thrashed by the time it gets to the Sierras. And for me, my priority is to see the Sierras, and Crater Lake and the Marble Mountains and all these sections that I've been dying to see. And if that means that I miss one, hard section of the Mojave, which I'm sure is really beautiful too, then I'm going to do that, because if I don't rest my body, then I am not going to make it to Canada. The other thing that I've also discussed with my physical therapist is that if I keep having problems, I can likely keep going, but I may not be able to do the kind of miles that I've been doing. I've been averaging about 20 miles a day, and I was expecting to average closer to 28, so it's been quite a change in my priorities. So for me, hike your own hike means that my body lasts to Canada, that I actually blog and YouTube, and that I stay with the herd and have that strong PCT community. That doesn't mean that I'm not ever gonna hike every mile of the PCT. I can come back and do the sections I missed. I can do it another year, but for me this year, hiking every mile of the PCT isn't gonna work. I'm not a purist anymore, but I am hiking the PCT, and that makes me super happy.